Alright guys, so really the only other thing that I have not covered is port forwarding. And you need to know how to do port forwarding if you want to use Metasploit across the internet. Now I'm not talking about using like Nmap and scanning a machine that's across the internet. That's not, you can do that, but you're not going to be very successful at actually exploiting a machine like that. And that's why you need to use payloads. Otherwise everything would be crazy. The chances of you finding a Windows XP machine that has no firewall and it's across the internet is very unlikely, because the router will act as a firewall, for example, and then you've got your Windows XP and then you've got your firewall on that. So anyways, it's a little bit complicated like that. I don't think you'd be very successful. This was geared for payloads. That's how this was that's what this is intended for. So another thing I want to mention is I'm here on my laptop doing this video. I'm not across the internet. I can't be in two places at the same time. So I'm not going to be able to give you a live demonstration of the end result. But if you would like to contact me and you want me to demonstrate it for you, and if you just want to play along, and if you are willing to let me exploit your machine, then I would be happy to do so. So, all fun and games. I won't be malicious or anything. But anyways, if you need me to demonstrate, no problem. As long as you understand the concept and as long as you have everything configured properly, this will work. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple things that we need to know. First thing is we need to know our IP address. What IP address has our internet service provider given us? How are we getting out to the internet? So there's one way that you can do that is to go to ipchicken.com. I'm not going to do that because I don't want you to see my IP address. But ipchicken.com, and in the middle of the screen, it's going to come up with an IP address. That is your IP address that your ISP has given you. If for whatever reason that doesn't work, whatismyip.com, you can go there, and that will give you the same result. Once you have that, we need to now talk about well, we'll get to port forwarding in a second, but we need to talk about the payload, because you need to generate a payload. So when you generate the payload, you're going to do you're going to set your lhost equals, and you need to put that ISP assigned IP address that they gave you. You can't use your 192 address if you're trying to go across the internet, because everybody has a 192 address, or they can. It's an internal network, and it's not going to go back across the internet if you use that address. So you have to use the IP address that your ISP has given you. So just remember that, and you have to remember the port. We need to know how to route this traffic properly so that you can get your Metasploit, your interpreter session, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Last thing I'll say before we get on with it is you need to do a reverse TCP. Bind TCP will not work. You have to have a reverse TCP. So anyways, this is going to actually be pretty sad right here, because I had never used this program other than just for a couple of minutes when I drew this little diagram that you're about to see. It's LibreOffice Draw. This is the equivalent of OpenOffice, but for Linux. And if you don't know what that is, then it's like Microsoft Office Paint, but it's really not. I'm not very familiar with it. So let me explain what all this is. It's not exactly the graphics that I would like to deliver, but that's what this program has for me to work with. So we have the internet. That's going to be our cloud. The cloud is our internet. As you can see, it says internet. Now this is more like a thinking cloud, like we're thinking about things, but that's just what this program has to work with. So the internet, I've got an arrow drawing down here that goes to a router, and then obviously the router can go to this cube or this cube. Now these are computers. The cubes are computers. The circle is the router, and here is our internet. Once I'm done explaining all this stuff and how it works, kind of give you a visual, then we're going to go into the Linksys router, and I will show you how to do the port forwarding. Now, I have a Belkin router that will not allow me to port forward. So there are routers out there that will not allow you to port forward, but Linksys should let you do it. I know that if you have a DDWRT firmware router, that will let you do it. And if you're looking for a router that, for whatever reason, if yours isn't working or it's not letting you do this, you can get a router as cheap as like $15 on Amazon or something like eBay or something. It's going to be older technology, probably like a G, but it will still, like if you got just a cheap Linksys, it will still work, and you'll be able to do some port forwarding if you just want to use this as a test router, or to have a separate router for something to come in as. But anyways, I'm not going to get into all that. There's no way that I can cover all the configurations of every single router. So check out Buffalo. Buffalo routers, they come with DDWRT. I'm a big supporter of DDWRT. Or I know that you're safe if you get a Linksys. You should have no problems doing some port forwarding. But anyways, so we're going to pretend that this is our ISP's IP address that they've given us for our internet. Now this over here, I'm going to talk about that in a second. It's the same IP address, but it's on a specific port coming in. So we've got our router. It's on 192.168.6.1. That's what mine's on. So that's what I used. Yours probably is going to be a 1.1 if you've never changed it. But I would say probably at least maybe 85% of the routers out there, by default stock, they will be on 192.168.6.1, or I'm sorry, 1.1. Mine's on 6.1 because I've changed it. So basically, we've got our computer. Our computer is going to communicate with our router, and the router can go out to the internet, and basically traffic can come back through the internet through the router and to our computer. And so how does this work? How does it know where to go? Well, we're going to talk about port forwarding in that aspect. And so when we do our MSF payload, let's say we do our MSF payload, we do our Windows interpreter, reverse TCP. We're going to set our L host. Now, remember, what do we set our L host to? L host equals, is it going to be this address, or whatever this address, a 192 address, or is it going to be this address? It's going to be this address because we need to get out to the internet. So just remember that. You want to go out to the internet, then you need to use this IP address. Now this is just an example. So whatever yours is, that's what you want to use. Don't use your 192 address. Use your ISP's given their IP address that they've assigned you. So anyways, I know I'm going back and forth. I want to make sure that you understand. So now we're going to do the L host, the L port equals. We need to set the L port. Now by default, I'm just going to use 4444. Now, I do have another one down here that's on port 8888. We'll get to that in a second. But by default, we're going to stick with 4444. Now, if you set up this payload, you do it through Veal or you do MSF payload, now you've got the IP address plugged in and you've got the port plugged in. Well, if that is now executed by somebody outside, somewhere over here on the internet, or somewhere here in the cloud, it's coming in on port 4444. So it's gonna route to your IP address with this specific port, and as soon as it hits your router is gonna look for this port. It's saying, okay, I've gotten you this far, but now what do I do with this port number? How do I get there? Now, if that port isn't open, your route is just gonna drop. Or if your router is not gonna know what to do with it, it's not gonna know where to route it, because we haven't set that up yet. So that's how we need to do it. So anything coming in on port 4444, that's what we set up our payload for, that's going to tell the route, we're going to tell the router to route it to this machine here with port 4444. If we did a 95.255, whatever that is, just as an example, and we did a colon, which would symbolize the port 8888, then the router would know to send it over here, 192.168.6.5 and 8888. But how does it know how to do that? Now we get into port forwarding. So, I know that that's a kind of a bad example there, but thanks, LibreOffice. It's not its fault. It's my fault for not being savvy with it. So let's go ahead and go to Internet browser, and I'm going to navigate to my Linksys, which is on 192.168.6.1. Now it's going to come up with a pop-up. If you have never seen this before, then that means you probably have never changed your default settings. And if you've never changed your default settings, then you need to either look on your router. It may have the username and password listed on there, but there are massive documentation on the internet. I actually distribute a list myself. It's a list of routers and different makes and models with default usernames and passwords. They're not unique. I could buy 1,000 of these Linksys E2500s, and the username and password will all be the same unless I change it. So I'm going to go ahead and just type in that. Again, if you, I can't configure, I can't I can't explain everybody's configuration, just no way to do it. So you would need to find out whatever that information is. And if you already know what it is, then cool. So I get to the setup page, and in my Linksys router, it's under Applications and Gaming. You may need to fish around on your router a little bit, and click on different buttons till you get to like port forwarding, or so now I've got single port forwarding, or I can port range forwarding, a whole bunch of different stuff. But I'm going to do a single port forwarding, and here we can see a breakdown of some ports that I have set up for port forwarding. I've got, for example, this one's for my SQL injection class that I teach. I've got a port forwarding open for that. My phishing class that I teach, I got one open for that. Got an SSH, a server port open, and I've got 3 Metasploit ports. Now if you take a look, I've got 192.168.6.7 running on port 4444 and 192.168.6.5 with 8888. So let's go back to our fancy LibreOffice. And yes, 6.7 is on 4444 and 6.5 is on 8888. So let's go back to the router. And I named it, well, you can name it whatever you want. I named mine Metasploit. So when it comes in, your payload, you set it on 4444. We're going to keep these ports, both of these, this one here and this one here. We're going to keep those exactly the same because it makes it easier. So we could technically tell the payload to, let's say, go on port 123, and then anything coming in on 123, we can tell it to go to port 4444. We're just not going to do that. We're going to keep it very simple. Whatever you're going to put in this box, you're going to put in this box, and that'll keep it super simple. So anything coming in through our IP address that our ISP has given us, and it's looking for port specifically 4444, we are now telling it to go to port 4444, but on this IP address. That's how it knows how to route from the internet. Once it hits your router, where does it go? It says, hey, I've arrived at this IP address, I have this port number, what do I do? Now it knows to deliver that to this IP address. Same thing with 8888. So now we can set up, we can do the same thing. We could put this as 1.7, which would just mean that we would need to have 2 Metasploit handlers listening, and one would, if anything comes in on 8888, that will be forwarded to port 8888. We would want to set up our listener on port 8888 for this IP address. So anything that's coming in on that, then we should get our interpreter session if that's what we've chosen. Port 4444, we should get our interpreter session, no problem. Make sure that these boxes are checked. You would want to scroll down here, click Save Settings. My settings have been saved. I say Continue, and that's that. Now I'm going to go ahead and disable this because I was just doing that as a demonstration. But if you understand the concept and you kind of see how it worked, whatever router you have, if you've got a port forwarding option, it should be, as long as you understand it, then you should be able to kind of figure it out once you start looking at the router. Again, if you do need some help, please send me an email. Let me know. I would be willing to help you out. Or if you just want me to help you with your router and maybe see if we can get port forwarding set up if you can't get it figured out, just let me know. Again, Google is always there. Google's our friend. At least for now it's our friend, unless it starts spying on us and all this other stuff. But anyways, that'd be going off on another tangent. Anyhow, guys, I think we've pretty much reached the end of our videos. If you are interested in the Metasploit certification that we offer, I would encourage you to take that. The price that you paid for the course, it includes your certificate, so you might as well take it. You have a couple chances to take the test if you, and I want you to pass. I don't set you up for failure. I can't speak right now. I've been talking for a long time. But I'm not here to make you guys not pass. I want you to pass, but it definitely is going to be a difficult test. There's going to be a written test and a hands-on portion. And it's definitely going to be a difficult and challenging test, but I've given you everything in this course is going to be covered in the test. So as long as you study the course material, then you should be fine. You have as long as you want to study the course material, and if you ever do feel ready and you want that certification, we will honor that. We'll give you your test. If you pass, we give you your cert. And if you do end up putting that certification on a resume or anything like that, we will definitely back you up. We give you a unique certificate number. And so if anyone did call us or email us and wanted to verify that your certificate is it is what you say it is, I'm more than happy to vouch for you guys. So if you pass the test, you've got the knowledge, and that's really all I'm looking for. If you don't choose to take the test, that's up to you. I hope you enjoyed the course. Again, if you guys have any questions or comments or anything, please just shoot me an email. I would appreciate it. Thank you very much for going through this course. I really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting Top Hat Sec, and I will see you guys in the future.